You know, I find it funny. With all these update videos I've done, this is the first time I've ever worn a hooded sweatshirt. This has been a long-standing stereotype among trans women. I'm not entirely sure why. I think the theory is that a hooded sweatshirt like this is often something that's a little puffy, so it helps hide the breast line a little bit, or lack thereof. At least that's my theory anyway. You can feel free to comment on it. So, I figure I'll start with what you're waiting for. The hormone situation has not really gotten any better. I did manage to see a doctor about it at the end of the month. And they told me that I needed an ultrasound. Well, they told me I needed an ultrasound before I went there. And then when they got there, they said I need an ultrasound because I'm pregnant. I'm sorry, I just couldn't resist that joke. But I get to that doctor's appointment, and they say they had to schedule an ultrasound for another time. Ordinarily, this wouldn't be such a problem, but this doctor's office is an hour drive each way, which means I have to take quite a fair bit of time off to be able to take care of said doctor's appointment. Thankfully, they agreed to have an ultrasound done locally, and then the results would be sent to this doctor. It did very much feel like a wasted trip, though, but I was able to get something out of it. So the doctor there originally thought I showed up for a consultation on an orchiectomy. Now, for those of you that don't know, that is the removal of the testicles. Well, considering there was not much else going on at that doctor's appointment, I'm like, you know what? Let's go through the consultation. Let's see what all this is about. And yeah, it's the same basic stuff that I've been through before, and much like the bottom surgery that I want in the future, I gotta get a signed letter from a therapist and a psychiatrist within 6 months of the operation. However, it was interesting to note that the doctor said I needed these letters for insurance sake. I thought it was really more for the idea of saying, hey, I'm of sound mind and of sound body. I'm not doing this because I lost on a dare. So that was a little bit refreshing in that way. But I will admit, I just find it funny how the doctor was saying, yeah, it's going to be a permanent life-changing experience. Obviously. But then again, I guess the doctor says that to all their patients. And the other big thing as well is they were saying, yeah, it'll probably be harder to get erections. Well, first of all, that phrasing is kind of a funny double entendre. But on top of that, that's a perk. At least for me, anyway. That's always been one of my issues whenever I wear gender-affirming clothing. Is that happens, and it just doesn't look so good anymore. It was alright when I had a lot higher estrogen levels in my system, as it was hard to be able to do that. Maybe I should say difficult. So I was able to schedule the ultrasound on the 17th of May, and then I would have a follow-up on the 29th of May. It's just starting to feel like I'm on one of those candid camera shows where some moment a crew of a whole bunch of people is going to say, "Ha-ha, we fooled you." But no, this is just the way it is. And unfortunately, I'm just going to have to wait. Because if we were to change the regimen of the hormones, it's probably going to throw off the results of the ultrasound. And if the new regimen ends up going south, much like the old regimen, then we're going to have to do this rigmarole all over again to try to figure out what is causing this in the first place. Although if I could get bottom surgery relatively quickly, then I wouldn't have to worry about testosterone levels anymore. And I guess that's another thing to mention right there. So, as I mentioned in the December update video, I had a consultation with a surgeon to be able to have bottom surgery. I left it rather open-ended because I wasn't sure how long laser hair removing that area was going to take. Well, this month I tried calling the nurse navigator several times, and I haven't really gotten much of a response back yet. The only thing I know for sure is the answering service says they're not taking any new patients until February of 2025. But I'm not sure if they mean new patients in general because I've had the consultation, I'm now an existing patient, or if they mean they're not doing any more surgeries until that particular day. Which, if that's the case, it would be annoying for me to have to wait that long, but, well, at least I'll know the laser hair removal process will be complete by then. So I guess the major thing to mention is what it's like to involuntarily detransition. At least I think that'd be the best way to describe it. Basically, detransitioning, as you could probably tell from the title, it's the opposite of transitioning. You kind of stop the hormone therapy, and in some cases you even have surgery to reverse yourself the way you were. Well, I'm sure I've noted the side effects in some of my other videos, but there was one important one I wanted to mention here at least, and that is the idea of emotions. It's always been a bit of a stereotype that women are overly emotional. And it's always been this immortal question for me. Is it because women are just allowed to feel emotions, or is it more of a hormonal thing? And in all honesty, I would say it's a combination of both. Because now that I have a lot higher testosterone in my system, I feel, I guess, uncomfortably numb is the best way to say it. Not comfortably numb like Pink Floyd, uncomfortably numb. Just kind of like what every kid in the early 2000s that listened to Linkin Park nonstop felt. That kind of like, drowning in my sin. That's basically how I feel right now. And the other thing that's kind of annoying is obviously I'm feeling rather depressed that now that my body is going backwards, and I want to cry, but that's not really physically possible for me anymore. And if I am able to somehow push myself to that point of being able to cry, it just doesn't feel as good as it used to. Like, when I was crying on estrogen, it felt fantastic. Like I was Atlas holding up the world, and in doing so, the world just kind of slid off my shoulders, and then I felt this relief. Crying on testosterone to me just kind of feels like Zeus just threw Mercury on top of Earth. It was alright when he was kind of holding Mercury there for a moment, but then afterwards I just don't feel so good. And as you can probably tell from the way the light is hitting my forehead, is I'm going back to having acne again. I was very much hoping to be done with this, because when I was on estrogen, it felt like my skin was actually healing. It had a tendency to dry out a fair bit more, but I would occasionally have like a zit, and if I just left it alone for like a day or two, it just disappeared. Now it just seems like I'm getting all kinds of weird little bumps and red spots and all over the place. And that's not including the areas that now my body hair is coming back, and yeah, I hate it here. I would like to get back to where I was. I want something else to get me through this semi-charmed kind of life. So there we go. I just got a few song references in this episode. But I don't want to dwell too much on the doom and gloom. Nah, I'm lying to myself by saying that. Even when I was younger, I very much loved steeping myself in this sort of dark, sad place, and I'm not entirely sure why. But I do at least want to move on to some more lighter-hearted conversation. So, towards the end of this month, there was a lot of seeing relatives. There were relatives that were in town I had to go see. And what was rather fascinating about those gatherings is I feel like I've finally gotten to the point where I can separate my old self from my new self. Now, what do I mean when I say that? Well, whenever I would hear my dead name, I would just instantly get triggered. I'd just be like, how dare you mention that name in my presence? It's almost like in Star Wars where Luke calls Darth Vader Anakin Skywalker, and he's just kind of like, that name no longer means anything to me. Even though it clearly does, because he's bringing such a point to it. But I think now I've finally gotten to the point where I can hear that dead name and just be like, who's he? And it's kind of nice to be able to do that. It's almost like letting go of a really dark, painful past memory, which is something I've very much had a hard time doing. So also at one of these family gatherings, and I hope this doesn't come off as me like trying to show off or anything, I just figured it was a bit of a funny story. It was after a big dinner. We're all sitting around in the living room and we're just starting up some conversation. And what came up in one of those conversations was there was a school district close by one of these relatives' houses where they were voting for who was going to be the prom king, the prom queen, that kind of stuff. Well, this year was unprecedented as I guess 2 people were voted for prom king. And it was just amazing because everybody in that living room was just kind of like, oh my gosh, who the heck cares? And it just kind of reinforced the idea that I do have a supportive family. It's kind of ironic because this is my dad's side of the family, and my dad is probably the most opposed person in my transition that I have met. But yet my dad's side of the family, they're just like, okay, so what? You got a new name? You got pronouns? We'll try. We'll probably mess up, but hey, thanks for letting us know. Like I said, I hope that just doesn't come off as me showing off, but more of like a funny little anecdotal story. So if I remember correctly last time, I feel like I was talking a little bit about attraction in some way. And I figure that could be an important little thing to discuss here as well. So, as my testosterone levels have started to rise, my horniness levels have started to rise. And as such, I'm starting to find attraction in places that, honestly, I kind of wish I wasn't. But I think the first thing I need to make perfectly clear is that I am definitely somewhere on the asexual spectrum. Now, what that means to me. To simply put, I have never seen a single person in my life that I went, okay, I want to have sex with this person. I've never felt that desire whatsoever. I've definitely felt aesthetic attraction, and I've even felt romantic attraction a few times, but sexual attraction, no, not really. So the main reason I bring this up, this isn't me coming out as bi, or at least, no, just thinking about that. But the way the hormones have been messed up, I'm seeing some guys and I'm like, you know what? He looks attractive. But then again, I wonder if that's really bi in a way, is to be able to see beauty in the male body. I mean, people can look at Michelangelo's Dave and there isn't a gay or straight connotation to that. Is there? It's very complicated because nude females in art is a very popular thing. And while some people might think it's a little in poor taste, I feel like people can look at that and be like, it's art. But I don't really think that's really such the case when it comes to nude male figures in art. I just figured that would be another fun little anecdote to mention is that was a bit of a common story I heard is that when you're on HRT, it'll probably change your orientation, that you'll start liking guys, you'll start finding them attractive. It's funny that I'm only really figuring that out on T. I don't know. Every body is weird. And I guess mine is even weirder. After all, I have yet to hear of any other trans person that's had to deal with a revolt like this. But then again, odds are there probably are other trans people out there that had to deal with this, but they probably don't want to make that knowledge so public as it could be used as ammo against us. But personally, when I decided to transition, I just kind of gave up on what other people think of me. I'm just going to be happy and I'm going to be knowledgeable. And that's the main reason that I wanted to make these videos, was to just kind of share a bit of an experience that more and more people are starting to figure out, but obviously not everybody knows about. For a lot of people in my life, I am the first transgender person that they have ever run into. And so I'm all about getting some information out there, because most of what's out there now is like really, really skewed. But then again, I feel like I'm starting to get into politics with that one, so I'm going to lay off. I figure I'm going to end the video with this last point. This was actually a bit of a fun time that I had this month. A popular hobby of mine was I love going to garage sales, rummage sales, estate sales, just driving along and seeing what I can find. I'm all about the thrill of the hunt because I'm a rather picky person, and most of what I like is usually the first thing to go. And that is one thing I can definitely rant about, is the idea that all these sales either start on a Thursday or Friday. What about people like me that work full-time? By the time I get out, the sale is gone, and by the time I get there, half of the stuff is missing. But I digress. So it all really just started out with this rummage sale that was not too far away from my house. Turned out I was there about 10 minutes before they opened the door. While I was there, I bumped into two ladies. One that was a fellow shopper, and the other that was in charge of the event but didn't have the key. We had a bit of a conversation there, and that's got to be the few times that they asked what my name was. I said my name was Julia, and they heard that my name was Julia. Usually whenever I tell people my name is Julia, they either say Julius or Julian. It was nice that it felt like they saw me as a woman, which I definitely needed that pick-me-up, because I'm just seeing myself more and more as a man with each passing week as this testosterone keeps raging within my system. That was nice. I didn't feel like an outsider. I felt like they saw me as much as a woman as I saw both of them as women. I don't know how to describe it, but there was just a really nice feeling of camaraderie there. So while I was passing by this rummage sale, I also passed by this garage sale. As I was looking through there, I found these cute pair of shoes. And amazingly enough, they were in my size. Trying to find shoes in a size 10 is a little difficult. Seems like the average shoe size for women is like 6 to 8 or something like that. And I would attempt to convert that into metric, but honestly, I have no idea because the sizes even vary by manufacturer, for goodness sake. But anyway, the shoes were in my size. And I even said that out loud to one of the other shoppers, only to realize that it was her shoes that she was selling. And we both kind of talked about it for a little bit. The idea that we were both tall women, and as such, we just had bigger feet. It just kind of reminded me a little bit of Stranger in a Strange Land. I found my Dawn. We were both of a very similar build. And not only were there shoes, but there was a ton of clothes that she was trying to get rid of as well. And they were the same size. It was fantastic. I still kind of wonder, though, if she saw me as another woman or if she saw me as a trans woman that needed some help with accessories. But then again, I have a tendency to just overthink things. I should just kind of appreciate the idea that there is a cis woman out there that had a very similar height and a similar build to me. Once again, it was just very affirming, and at this point, I can take all the gender affirmation I can get. Well, I think that's about all I've got for this month. I do have a few other things I could talk about, but they may be a little bit more on the political side of things. Take, like, certain video games, for instance. But, as per usual, if there's anything else you want to talk about or anything you're curious of, just feel free to leave a comment down below. I feel like I don't have to censor myself so much in the comment section. Till next time, be yourself, no matter who that is.